Good morning and welcome to our community. Susie Thomas here with you this morning and finding out more about a new book, Unbound. Stephanie Liberatore has joined us before. Today we also have Robin Roseberry. Good morning to both of you.
Good morning, Susie.
The exciting thing, the reason you're here, is you're going to be doing a book signing again in our area, and we want to get all that information out. So first of all, Stephanie, tell us where you're going to be.
I'm going to be at Dayspring Christian Bookstore in New Philly. It's located at 143 High Street.
And when will that be?
Saturday, August 13th from 1 to 3 p.m.
All right, great. We want to make sure that we're there. Now let's find out why, because you've written a book called Unbound. This is really starting to take off and helping a number of people. Tell us a little bit about what it's about, first of all.
Well, Unbound is a Bible study written for women, although I know that some men can get a lot of truth out of it too, but it's written for women to help them heal from brokenness from their past.
And particularly we're talking about sexual past and physical past and some things that are difficult to talk about. How did you get yourself to sit down and write this?
Because God did a number on me. He just did so much in my own life that I didn't think possible that he could do. But I was just broken and doing the same things over and over again, hoping for a different result. It didn't. But when I found so much hope and healing for my own past, I felt called to write the study. And he's even doing more work in my heart. So we're never a finished product.
I don't think we ever learn quite so much as when we're teaching somebody else, too. So as you are writing the book, did more healing happen? Did more things come trudging up?
No, I wouldn't say things came trudging up. It wasn't like a painful thing, but he was just teaching me more and more about what intimacy is. And it's not just something that happens in the bedroom. He wants intimacy with him, that we find our all in all in him first, because that's really what makes us complete.
It's a tough one to learn at first, and sometimes because of things we're taught, I'm going to think also maybe because of things we're shown in the media. What makes us feel valued as a person is not what God says makes us feel valued as a person. Can you speak to that?
Well, I think that women, we're so relational, and we think that our completeness or our wholeness is going to happen when we find a relationship. And that just simply isn't the truth. There's a scripture in Proverbs 16:25, I believe. It says, there's a way that seems right to a man, but in the end it leads to death. And if I keep going my own way, thinking that trying to go my own way and trying to make relationships work, in the end, it really does lead to death. And it's just death of relationship, death of trust, death of self-esteem. There's a lot of death that comes by trying to do our own thing and trying to find our source of wholeness or our sense of being in anything else but Christ. And that's a tough lesson. And really it was a tough lesson for me to learn, because I was going around that mountain a long time, many years, with the same result.
It's interesting you say this is a Bible study. This isn't really a book that you sit down ideally by yourself and just read chapter by chapter. It's better to share this. Tell me a little bit about why.
You're right. It's not that book that you take to the beach.
No. Or read on the plane.
Right. Or read on the plane. It really is meant to be done together in a small group of women in a confidential setting, trusted setting. Can women and have women use this just themselves or one other person? Yes, they have. And I've heard wonderful stories of what God did in them and shown them. But it really is meant to be used in a group setting. And, there's power in being able to tell our story and having somebody else in that group, nod and to say, wow, I've been through that too. It's part of the healing. When I tell somebody my story, there's more healing because the enemy can't remind me of those things anymore.
Right.
Of those things that I've been healed from. He can't he can't continue to shame me.
And one of his tricks always seems to be to make you try and feel, kind of whisper in your ear, you're the only person that's ever done this. You know, no one else would understand. And to isolate us in that way rather than running to the Lord and running to each other for forgiveness and redemption and reconciliation.
Right.
And that brings us to Robin. Good morning.
Good morning.
And you got to participate in one of the Bible studies where Stephanie was leading. Tell us a little bit about you.
I did. Well, I was one of those women who always looked for validation in men. And I remember once a couple years ago, you know, God said to me, the answer isn't in men. And I have been a single mom. My son's 25.
Wow.
And I made a lot of mistakes. And you know, relationship-wise, and God miraculously led me to this Bible study. I was actually looking for a counselor, and I called PSC and talked to Stephanie. I didn't know her, and she talked to me for an hour. And she didn't give me a counselor, but she did say that she was thinking of having a class, a Bible study with this book that she just wrote. And I told her all throughout the class that I just feel like that was God's absolute best for me, that I got to participate in the study with the author of the book. It doesn't get any better than that.
It's not easy to sit in a room full of women and bare your soul the way that this kind of a study and exercise would create. How did you get from point A to point B and feel that trust to be able to open up to another group of women?
I did one other thing through PSC, and I remember one of the things they told me in that was that whatever you do not expose, Satan can torture you with. So going into this, I knew that I wasn't going to hide anything. If you walk in a group of women, it was a small group, and there were, 3 of us and 2 facilitators, and you walk in and everyone's awkward and everyone's, you can read in their body language, they're uncomfortable, and you're different from them, they're different from you. You think in your mind, what am I doing here? I won't be able to relate to these people. But always in the back of my mind was, whatever you don't divulge, Satan will still torture you with. So the beginning, beginnings are kind of hard and uncomfortable, a little clunky. But trust, it's amazing how, especially this book, I mean, when you're doing your homework in the book, you feel like Stephanie's right there sitting beside you. And you're not doing it by yourself. It's so personal, and it's so like she's right there with you, and she understands everything that you have ever been through and you have ever gone through, and and God just saturates the book, and you don't feel like you're the only one that's ever experienced the things you've experienced, or done the things you've done, or hold on to the guilt because of things you've done. You're not the only one. And you start to divulge, it's slowly in the class, you divulge a little bit and a little bit and a little bit, and then so do the other girls, and God just steps in.
Yeah.
All I can say is how I got from point A to point B is God comes into that first class, and he just makes you feel safe. You're safe in that room.
And he heals, and he wants to heal, and he wants us to want him to heal. Isn't it unbelievable how that thing that seems to separate us from him, that would have us think that it's separating us from him, is the very thing he died for? What are we hiding? But he knows he already died for it, dealt with it, it's over. He's put it in the past. We need to put it in the past. Right. Stephanie, it's got to be interesting for you to go into a room. Do you have tips for other people who might be leading others using your book in these kinds of discussion? Because we can't all have Stephanie Liberatore in the room, but I'm sure there would be models who would like to go on and use you as their role model and then go on and continue to lead these. How do you take a room full of people and create that safe space?
That is a great question. Definitely by the leading and power of the Holy Spirit. And I would love nothing more than to see it multiply and to see God raise up other leaders, because it's an epidemic of brokenness that we have in our churches and all around us. And so we need women who are raised up to lead others through this. But I would say vulnerability is so important. You have to have a leader who is vulnerable and willing to share her own story, who's led by the Spirit, and just creating a safe space. From the beauty of the room, women respond to beauty, keeping it simple, but just being willing to trust the process. Because in this group that Robin was in, it was rocky a few weeks into it, it was rocky. But I have to say, if you stick with it and allow him to use those rocky places, he works things out, because he wants nothing more than to heal that very thing.
And self-disclosure tends to yield self-disclosure.
Absolutely, it does.
So once you're opening up, they tend to open.
Absolutely. And I have to say this about Robin. She was so teachable and vulnerable. I mean, she came in this with the mindset that I'm only going to get out of it what I put into it. And she was an open book. And it was because of her sharing that other women would have the courage to share maybe similar things in their own story. And that's how it worked. You're right. When you say vulnerability begets vulnerability, that's the truth.
Tell me about the relationships built then among the women. You must have a whole new group of sisters.
Yeah, we do. I text them. We talk still. Mm-hmm. I was afraid for the last class to be over, and I halfway through I would tell Stephanie, "Can we lengthen it? Can we add a couple more weeks? Can we
write a couple more chapters?"
Kind of like when you take your baby home from the hospital, you're like, "Are you sure I can do this without you nurses?"
Exactly.
But yeah, it's impossible to be that transparent and vulnerable with women and then not leave with friendships, because the reasons that we're there are all the same reasons. So we're already alike. And I've always said, without transparency, people feel condemned. So especially transparency from leaders. And because Stephanie was so transparent, it allowed all of us to be that way, and we were that way with each other. And then when the last class was over, we were already from the parking lot of our last class, because we had a fabulous, wonderful party at the end. And from the parking lot, we were making plans to get together again. I do text. I text those girls if something's wrong, I'm having a bad whatever, I'll text them, and immediately, we're bonded.
Yeah.
No.
Let's make it very clear. We are not talking about an anti-man program in any way.
No.
It's not like we're saying we don't need men. It's that there has been just sort of a perversion of what intimacy truly is. Our world has really twisted it. And so let's talk, we're out of time. Let's talk in our second segment about what true intimacy really is and some of the things that you talk about in your book, and take us through some of the things. And Robin, feel free to jump in and talk about whatever you like as far as what that has meant to you personally. We're going to take a quick break here. In the meantime, you are listening to Robin Roseberry and Stephanie Liberatore. Stephanie, the author of Unbound, and you're listening to Our Community.